You're watching Just the News. I'm Amata Balachandra. Starting off with budget highlights. Now, Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman presented the fourth union budget today. In her shortest budget speech, Sitharaman said, and I quote, "This budget seeks to lay the foundation and give a blueprint to steer the economy over the Amrit Kal for the next 25 years, from India at 75 to India at 100." End quote. Now, here are some of the key takeaways from the budget. The country's total expenditure is estimated at 39.45 lakh crore rupee in financial year 23, while receipts other than borrowings are estimated at 22.84 lakh crore rupees. Taxpayers, and this is an announcement that was made, taxpayers now have an opportunity to correct errors and file updated returns within 2 years of the relevant assessment year. However, there was no changes as far as personal income tax slabs go. The tax deduction limit for state government employees on the employer's contribution to the national pension system will be increased to 14% from 10%. To bring them on at par with the central government employees. As part of Atmanirbhar Bharat, 2,000 kilometers of network will be brought under Kavach. 400 new generation Vande Bharat trains are to be built, and that was announced as well. Spectrum auctions will be conducted in 2022 to facilitate the rollout of 5G mobile services. E-passports using embedded chips and futuristic technology will start rolling out in financial year 23 to make overseas travel more convenient. Finance Minister also went on to say that the government is going to introduce a national tele-mental health program and roll out an open platform for the national digital health ecosystem. Meanwhile, Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman also said that the gross GST collection for the month of January 2022 is 1,40,986 crore rupees, which is the highest since the inception of GST. Also, an interesting announcement was made that income from the transfer of any virtual digital assets will be taxed at 30%. The Reserve Bank of India will issue a digital currency based on blockchain and other technologies starting in financial year 23. The Finance Minister said, and I quote, "Introduction of central bank digital currency will give a big boost to digital economy." End quote. For those of you who want to know what exactly happened in the budget, not just the highlights, but how it impacts your investment, do catch the conversation Faye has had with financial experts. That's up on our YouTube channel. Let's also now take a look at what's making news apart from the budget highlights. I'll tell you first, starting off with the COVID numbers. India has reported 1.67 lakh new COVID cases in the last 24 hours. It reported 1,192 deaths in the last 24 hours as well. Delhi has reported 2,683 new COVID cases. The positivity rate is at 5.09%. Maharashtra has reported 14,372 new COVID cases in the last 24 hours. Some good news coming in from Mumbai. Mumbai has reported just over 800 new COVID cases, slightly lesser than what we saw in the last couple of days. It was reporting over 1,000 cases in the last 1 week. Bengaluru has reported 6,685 new COVID cases, while Karnataka has reported 14,366 new COVID cases in the last 24 hours. Now, different states have been relaxing COVID restrictions. We'll start off with Maharashtra. Beaches, gardens, parks will remain open as per normal timing before the advent of the COVID pandemic. So that's going to continue as is. Amusement or theme parks, swimming pools, water parks to remain operational with 50% of the operational capacity. Restaurants and theatres are going to remain open with 50% capacity. Marriages are now going to be allowed to have guests up to 25% of the capacity of the open ground. And banquet halls or 200 guests, whichever is lower. There shall be no restrictions in movement during night hours of 11 p.m. to 5 a.m. Local tourist spots will remain open as per normal timing as well. Meanwhile, Odisha government on Monday has issued new COVID guidelines and revised the night curfew timing by extending it by pushing it in fact by an hour from 9 p.m. to 10 p.m. Now, the night curfew in urban areas will remain in effect from 10 p.m. to 5 a.m. Meanwhile, Jharkhand government has eased COVID restrictions and allowed schools for all classes in 17 districts and colleges to reopen from February 1st. Schools will reopen for all classes in 17 districts. All shops except restaurants, bars, medical stores and petrol pumps will remain open till 8 p.m. Schools and other educational institutions in Tripura will also be reopened with full strength from Monday after the state government lifted the suspension of offline classes with strict adherence of COVID protocol. Chandigarh has also announced offline classes of standards 10, 11 and 12 starting the 1st of February. The Education Department also announced that students in these classes will have the option of choosing between online and offline classes, leaving it to parents and students to decide. Meanwhile, the Delhi High Court has termed Delhi government's order of wearing masks inside car as absurd. Now, the court also questioned why the said order still continues to exist and asked the state why it was not being withdrawn. The court said, and I quote, "It is absurd actually. You're sitting in your own car and you must wear a mask." End quote. Now, 4 petitions were filed in 2020 before the court challenging the imposition of a fine of 500 rupees. The same stands now increased to 2,000 rupees and on the petitioners for not wearing a face mask while traveling alone in a private car. Meanwhile, let's also see what's happening across the globe as far as COVID is concerned. South African government has said that people who test positive for COVID without symptoms would no longer have to isolate, and those with symptoms will now have to isolate for 7 days instead of 10 days. Now, in a statement, the government said, and I quote, "The rationale for these amendments is informed by the proportion of people with immunity to COVID, which has risen substantially, exceeding 60 to 80% in several sero surveys." End quote. Denmark has also lifted COVID restrictions. It's become the first European Union country, in fact, to end all of its domestic COVID restrictions. While cases are still relatively high, the authorities say that the virus no longer qualifies as a critical threat. Now, earlier, health authorities in Denmark had said that COVID should now be treated as an endemic and not a pandemic. Moving away from COVID news now, let's also see what's making news across the country. YouTuber Vikas Phatak, who's also known as Hindustani Bhau, was on Tuesday afternoon produced before a magistrate court in Bandra in the city of Mumbai and remanded in police custody along with his aide Ikrar Khan till the 4th of February. Now, this comes after students across various cities in the state of Maharashtra, including Mumbai, held protests on Monday demanding the cancellation of the offline board exams. Now, the call for protest was given by Phatak, according to this report by the Indian Express. On January 29th, he had uploaded a video on Instagram asking students to peacefully protest with him against the government's decision in Dharavi outside the residence of State School Education Minister Varsha Gaikwad. According to the Indian Express, the protest took a violent turn in Mumbai and Nagpur, with some students damaging private and police vehicles by pelting stones. Now, the police had to resort to lathi charge to disperse the mob. The protests at Jalgaon and Aurangabad, however, remained peaceful. Yesterday, Varsha Gaikwad, in fact, appealed to the student community not to resort to such activities. In fact, an FIR has now been registered against Phatak and several others under IPC sections, including 353, which is obstructing public servant from discharging duty. Also in the news, the Kerala High Court on Monday has deferred the order issued to popular Malayalam news channel MediaOne by the Ministry of Information and Broadcasting, barring transmission, citing security reasons. Now, acting on a petition moved by MediaOne TV, Justice N. Nageresh states the implementation of the government directive until its next hearing which is going to take place on Wednesday, and asked additional Solicitor General S. Manu to get instructions from the Union Ministry as well. Now, following this relief from the High Court, MediaOne TV announced that the channel would resume transmission, which was suspended around noon that day. On to some political news now. A day after the ruling BJP announced its list of candidates for the upcoming Manipur assembly polls, the party continued to witness an exodus of its leaders on Monday, with sitting MLA Fukrem Sarat Singh, who joined the Congress. Now, apart from the sitting BJP MLA, former Minister Biren Singh, another aspiring BJP candidate, also joined the Congress at a program on Monday. On Sunday, several BJP members had protested against the party after a list of candidates was released and they were unhappy. On to business news right now. This is a report by ANI which has quoted sources which says the national oil marketing companies have slashed the prices of 19 kg commercial LPG cylinder costs by 91.5 rupees effective from the 1st of February. Now, ANI, which is quoted sources, says that the 19 kg commercial cylinder will cost 1,907 rupees in Delhi. Last month, on January 1st, the price of 19 kg commercial LPG cylinders was reduced by 102.50 rupees, bringing the price of cylinders to 1,998.50 rupees in Delhi. On to news coming in from across the globe right now. Focus on Russia-Ukraine crisis continues. There have been angry clashes between Russian and US envoys at the UN Security Council. Now, this was after the US called a meeting to discuss Moscow's troop build-up on its borders with Ukraine. If you remember, Russia has placed an estimated 1 lakh troops, tanks, artillery and missiles near Ukraine's frontiers. US Ambassador Linda Thomas-Greenfield has said that the mobilization was the biggest Europe had seen in decades. Her Russian counterpart accused the US of fomenting hysteria and unacceptable interference in Russia's affairs. The US and UK have now promised further sanctions if Russia invades Ukraine. Russia, however, has maintained that it does not plan on doing so. Also, according to a UN report, over 100 former Afghan officials, security personnel, and those who worked with international troops have been killed since the Taliban takeover in August. Now, the report also detailed a government clampdown on peaceful protests, as well as a lack of access for women and girls to work and education. Now, on the other hand, the Interior Ministry of Taliban has announced on Twitter that, and I quote, "The Islamic Emirate has not killed anyone since the amnesty was announced," end quote. Moving on now, the US, Britain and Canada have imposed sanctions on officials in Myanmar. Now, the action has been taken on the eve of the anniversary of the military coup that plunged the country into a crisis. The joint action by the three nations targets judicial officials involved in prosecutions against Myanmar's ousted leader Aung San Suu Kyi. Moving on to one piece of good news before we wrap things up on this bulletin. This is also sports news, but also good news. Indian men's hockey team goalkeeper PR Sreejesh, who was part of the men's team that clinched the bronze medal at Tokyo Olympics, has won World Games Athlete of the Year award for 2021 performances on Monday. Now, he became only the second Indian to receive this award. In 2020, Indian women's hockey team captain Rani Rampal became the first Indian to win it. That brings us to the end of this bulletin. Thank you so much for watching. Good night.